Mark with Samaritan's Well. I've got Shelley, one of our licensed counselors here, and today we're going to be talking about what it's like when you have anxiety and depression at the same time. So tell us, Shelley, what happens when you're impacted by both of those at the same time?
Absolutely. So this is extremely common, and I think what most people recognize is that there's that mental and emotional component to it. But what a lot of people don't realize is the physical impact that anxiety and depression is having on their nervous system.
Okay.
And so we have like the sympathetic nervous system, which is, we were given to be able to handle those emotions of
Three
the
Fs,
fight,
right?
flight, or freeze response. Exactly. And so, the sympathetic nervous system prepares us for that, to handle that. So I think of it as like a car. When you're driving a car, it's the accelerator. Your foot is on the accelerator. So that's your sympathetic nervous system. It can get stuck in the on position with anxiety. With depression, that's when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. That's when, your body might start to shake or shiver, your heart rate starts to slow down. And then again, if you're in a car, that's when you're putting your foot on the brakes. So what can happen is we can alternate between the two if we have anxiety and depression when traumatic events happen, whether it be like a big T trauma or a little T trauma. And so the diagram that we have, the window of tolerance, was created by the Foundation for Human Enrichment. It just gives us a great visual of what is actually happening in the nervous system when we're struggling with those symptoms of anxiety and depression. So what most people will find very familiar when it comes to anxiety is like panic, hyperactivity, exaggerated startle reflex, things like that. So that's when you're in that stuck on the on position.
You're like high, tense.
Exactly. And then when you start to kind of calm down or go back down with the parasympathetic system, that's when
it's bringing you down, right?
Yes.
It's trying to bring you down.
Exactly. But when people have depression, they can go out of that normal range, and so the down then becomes depression, lethargy, exhaustion, chronic fatigue for a lot of people, and even, some gut issues as well.
And so, like, the gut issues, Shelley, is that what people might say, it's like churning or something, or they're just upset down there, they feel it in their gut or something like that? Is that part of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. And in clients, I've seen it manifest as nausea, maybe even vomiting, and things like that.
I've noticed that the most common place it seems like to carry that anxiety is your gut. But some people will get like tightness in their chest with that anxiety. And then sometimes I'll have somebody that's like, they get the headache or they get it up here. So it seems to be here, here, or here, but the gut seems to be the most common for sure.
Yes. We can go on to the cycle of connection.
Okay, tell us about that.
So the cycle of connection, this was created originally by Shannon Rance, but the modifications that are made that you'll see on the diagram were by Janelle Linden.
Okay.
She is a therapist that does trainings on EMDR and Christianity, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about EMDR later. But,
that's right.
This cycle of connection is very helpful for people to understand the connection to what happens to them when they've had wounds or traumas, any real or perceived event happen to them in their life. And so starting with number one, there's the emotional needs that are listed there. For believers, a lot of these needs are met by God. Some are met by maybe a spouse, by ourselves. But oftentimes what happens is because of the wounds or events, traumatic events, and what's important to note is that these can be real or perceived events.
Could you tell them an example of perceived? Because I get that a lot too, but...
So a perceived event would be maybe two children growing up in the same household.
Oh, yeah.
But they have very different ideas of what their childhood was like. One views it as they had a perfect childhood, parents were great. The other one, they felt like maybe they were neglected.
Dad was gone all the time and mom yelled too much and whatever. Oh no, we had the greatest mom in the world.
Exactly.
I've definitely had that before. So perceptions between siblings is a classic example.
Yes.
Okay. And so tell us more about the cycle of connection as you go through these steps. We've got the wounds or events that come in, and they're doing something to like block or thwart those emotional needs being met. Is that
Yes.
kind of what we're saying?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
then when you go to number 3, this leads to, negative belief systems that develop. And often they start with persistent negative thoughts. But over time, those thoughts become schemas or belief systems about the world around us, and more particularly about self. And so a very common one is, I'm not good enough.
Not good enough.
And so, but there's many there listed. I'm worthless, things like that. So these are belief systems that people develop about themselves based on those events that have happened. So then it leads to their behaviors, right? So kind of
Right,
like,
because our behaviors flow out of our beliefs,
exactly.
whether they're healthy or unhealthy beliefs,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. So that's exactly right. They're there to help us cope, maybe like defense mechanisms, survival instincts, but ultimately they can keep us in a cycle of being stuck.
Okay, so we can get stuck in those behavior struggles that come from the false beliefs, but the false beliefs can flow from those wounds and perceptions. What's after that stage 4, talking about those behaviors or struggles that we get stuck in?
So next, when it comes to 5, this is where the conflicting feelings come in. So
Okay.
people recognize that there's something missing, like there's an emotional need there that's not being met. They can feel that, but they have trouble identifying that because their experiences say that need is maybe unimportant, or it's too painful, or they don't want to go back there to understand how to get that need met. And so then they stay in this vicious cycle of the unmet need kind of supports the behavior, and it's hard to get out of that place.
Oh yeah, that what I see over and over, and I tell my clients that usually something that I don't want to go back to, a wound, is too much of something. TOO, right? It's too shameful, it's too painful, it's too scary, it's too fearful. Oh, I'm too mad there, or I'm crying too much. And so those are always signs that we need to get something uncovered and healed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I like the way you put that, because that too much feeling makes it feel very overwhelming for people.
Yeah.
It leads to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness because they feel like they can't handle those emotions.
And then we can just go on and on avoiding it or trying to do things to balance something out or make us feel better in the short term.
Exactly.
But in the long term, we need to get to the bottom of it, right? Okay, so what's next after that? We're talking about number 5, where you can get stuck or ambivalent. That's what you were saying.
Yes.
What flows here?
So now is the good part, right? So
Okay.
we move into, so the first part is this is what's happened, but now we move into the hope, the positive aspect of that.
Good.
And to number 6. So this is, integrating the emotional healing. So what we do, like seeking out counseling, coming to a counselor, mentoring, support of community and family, your support system. But really the key part of that is like processing the trauma,
Right.
as well as, healing the younger parts of yourself.
Right. So that's called a lot of different things, but really it's just a wound back there, maybe at 6 or 16 or whatever, that has never been resolved. And so we talk about it's like it's been left, a part of me that's kind of been left behind. It's not really spooky. It's just like, oh, that time when, maybe dad hit mom or something, where you were in a terrible accident or something physical, or it could be emotional or whatever. But you're going back to try to, and I like that first word, we're trying to integrate that painful thing.
Yes.
And so that's where it takes some support from your community or your counselor or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay, go on. That's great.
And then when we go into like bridging that connection gap, so we're trying to, again, create that cycle of the healthy connection. This is how we integrate the new belief systems in with self and other people's and your perceptions of other people. Specifically, one of the more important ones there is to help clients recognize that they can't go back and undo the wounds that have happened.
Like change history.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
That would be amazing if we could, but we
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can transform our beliefs and our perceptions about what happened to us in order to be able to move forward and ultimately live out that unconditional love for ourselves and for
Right.
other people.
And the scripture that's coming to mind is Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And in each of these wounds, there's a lie. And when there can be true integration where you hear from God, you might hear from God in that still small voice in counseling. You might hear it from your community or from, like you said, from your spouse or any source. But when you get that truth that overrides the lie, there's a change that happens then. And that's when the integration starts happening for that wound.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to not isolate. I think that, when that's a common symptom for both anxiety and depression is to want to isolate from other people. And it's hard to get that support, that community, some of those revelations that we receive
That's right.
if we're in isolation.
And we're a lot more vulnerable to the enemy and his fiery darts.
Exactly.
And believe me, he knows the false beliefs that you got.
Yes.
And he just kind of throws them back at you. So isolation does that too. Now tell us about what are some initial practical steps that people could take to help manage their anxiety and depression?
So initially, counseling,
We
finding the
recommend
right
counseling.
fit.
We got to say it. Yes.
We know that. But again, and then what we were speaking to with, community and the right support system, as well as, exercise. Exercise is one of the next best things to medication.
Oh, yes.
And even what a lot of people think is that there has to be this all or none. We have that all or none thinking, all or none approach to exercise. But even if it's just starting out small and taking that 5-minute walk around the block, just getting that vitamin D, just getting out there and being willing to just give yourself that time to, get those muscles going.
And also, if you can do one positive thing for yourself, you could do two. And if you could do two, you
Yes.
could do three. Plus, you could take a walk with somebody you like or somebody you're getting to know, and you could have some social time too.
Absolutely. Just yes. And you can start small and build on that. And then I also, suggest with my clients looking into different types of calming or meditation apps.
Right. There are some good ones.
There are some great ones. There's some, Christian-based meditation
With
apps.
Bible
where you're
verses and-
yes,
Yep.
exactly. Meditating on the Word. There's ones that incorporate deep breathing, because again, anything that you can do to calm that nervous system, which deep breathing, exercise, it's going to be working on that aspect of the symptoms of depression and anxiety.
That's so good. And that self-soothing that we're talking about is such a huge task of maturing and helping to overcome both of these, right? Because it gets us back. It gets us back to that more normal place in the middle. Well, this is great. Is there anything that you want to close with, Shelley, that you want to say else about what we've talked about? I think this has been helpful.
I would just say that, we can go into more detail, within the counseling session.
Yeah, we'll do that in future podcasts. So thanks very much for being with us. Shelley, thanks a lot. That was really good. And, you can reach us at SamaritansWell.com. Got a bunch of podcasts and one more from today.